And if I stay so focused on a certain goal or a certain path, what opportunities do I miss out on, or what experiences do I miss out on you? And again, you put me in a corner, I will now become the poster child for mental health in the legal community because you won't take that narrative from me. I just needed to grow up. But also, it's okay to not know what you want to do at 18.
Absolutely. So welcome back to another episode of the Success in South Florida podcast. I'm your host today, Adam Rossen, and I'm so excited to have my friend Hillary here. Hillary, I know it's been a while, right? We haven't had a real long, deep conversation in a while. And I know we tried to get you on a few months ago. It was totally my mistake, my fault. But
can you see that? A man admitting he was wrong.
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
I've learned over the years I admit I'm wrong. I don't know, 3 to 5 times a week. Okay. But Hillary, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
All right.
It's great to see you.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really is a good, we had a few minutes to catch up beforehand, and it's like it was 15 years ago, within a minute. So Hillary, you're here. Okay. You're doing some really big things. I've wanted to have you on here for a while. All right. So just talk to us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing now. We'll then rewind a little bit. We'll go deep into the depths of your childhood. No, I'm kidding. But we will rewind.
Free therapy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, amateur therapy.
There we go.
I got to put all the disclaimers. I might screw you up more after this session. So we'll see. I'll do my best. And, and then we'll go back and obviously go through your journey. So
awesome.
Talk to us just about who you are and all the big things. I like to let all of our guests introduce themselves because they can always do it better than I can.
Great. So my name is Hillary Cassel. I am a Florida native. I was born and raised in West Palm Beach, Florida, grew up in Wellington, went to Florida State University for undergrad, and came and moved to Broward to go to law school. Graduated law school in 2006. I've been practicing law ever since. I am a mom. I run a law firm in Hollywood, Florida, and I think one of the coolest things that I get to do right now is I am a state representative representing District 101 in Broward County, which includes Fort Lauderdale, Dania Beach, Hollywood, Hallandale, and Davie. Very,
very, very cool. And so we were part of the same 2006 state attorney class. We started in the summer fall. Right. We passed the July bar together. So we have lots of stories for that. That's a different show. Okay. And a lot of what happened in 06, 07, and 8 probably stays in that timeline.
We had a good time.
We did. There's a multiverse out there with all those things. But let's kind of go back. So born and raised, in Palm Beach County, and you lived in Wellington. Wellington's become a lot bigger now. First
you can thank my mom for that.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have horses?
I did not have horses. We were not equestrians. My parents actually moved to Wellington in the late 70s. They're both from Delray Beach. And my dad's a home builder. I grew up on construction sites. And my parents moved to Wellington recognizing that it was going to be good opportunity for growth. And so they moved there in the late 70s.
Wow, really cool. Yeah, I mean, it was getting big, I think, when we were kids, and now it's it's huge. So that's really nice. And so growing up, did your dad's a home builder. What did your mom specifically do?
So my mom, interestingly enough, was involved in local politics, which is why I swore I would never go into politics. My mom was very invested in the community and wanting to make sure that Wellington was a place for young professionals and families. And when I was growing up, I loved sports. My brother ended up playing professional baseball, and I loved sports as well. But there was no opportunity in Wellington at the time. It wasn't a city. There were no real recreation activities. The only thing that was available for me to do was dance or swim. And I really wanted to play basketball. But in order to do that, we had to go into different communities. And my mom really saw the opportunity that if we wanted Wellington to be a place where young professionals wanted to raise their families, the community really needed to invest in parks and recreation. So my mom ran for commission during during Acme, when it was Acme Improvement District. She ran on a Parks and Recreation platform. I was traumatized because I will never forget in middle school, her favorite thing to do was to do carpool line with signs all over her car. And I've just done the same thing to my child. He drives around the community and, his mom's face is everywhere and, the embarrassment comes over.
You want to negotiate being dropped off like a few blocks away.
Every day, please. And she would always say, carpool's the best visibility. Like, we're going through the carpool line. But, she was really, I was really raised in a family that believed in giving back and being a part of the community. And she really was adamant that we needed to be involved in the community. So she won her election. And then when Wellington became a village, they asked her to step away from politics and become the director of Parks and Recreation. And she turned Wellington into a top 5 national parks program. So if you know anything about Wellington, you go to Pearson Park, the championship softball fields, Tiger Shark Cove. My mom's responsible for all of that. So I'm very, very proud of her. And the apple does not fall far from the tree.
So how real is the show Parks and Rec? Right?
So I actually refused to watch it because for so long I really felt like they were making fun of me. And at a job that I took very recently after departing from the state attorney's office, one of my colleagues nicknamed me Leslie Knope. And I was really frustrated by it, by not watching the show. And my husband, when I was running for office, when I made the decision, he said, I have 2 requests. You must watch The West Wing and you must watch Parks and Recreation. And it is an honor to be called Leslie
Nice.
Knope.
Yes, it is.
It is an absolute honor. There is a lot of truth to it. There was a lot of fights over bridges, over the mini golf courses. But, it was a refreshing show. And like I said, having the nickname Leslie Knope is an honor I hold very, very, very close.
It's one of my favorite shows. And especially for me, somebody who's watched every episode of that, but I'm still only about 3 or 4 episodes in The Office. I know I don't know how that's possible. Every day I walk around here and there's somebody else saying, well, Adam, if you watched The Office, you would get this and know. And I was like, I know the characters. I know the gist. And they're like, no, like, you've become Michael Scott. I'm like, oh God.
No.
Oh God. They're like, yeah. So
learn from me. Don't wait so long. I like I said, that is an absolute honor. So watch the show. Right. It'll give you a different perspective of probably how your community sees you.
It's usually in, somehow me getting in trouble or saying something inappropriate or whatever. It is what it is. Hey, I haven't changed much in years, right? So yeah, exactly. So that's really cool. So, I knew your dad was a home builder. I did not really know about your mom though. So that's really interesting. So, and it's funny because a lot of times our parents can kind of shape us in either bring us closer to what they do, right? Or push us away. And sometimes what you think it's going to be, 20 years later, he circles around like, oh my God, right? Or you say something and you're like, that's my mom saying that, or my dad, or my grandfather. Oh my God, right? You're like, wow, how did this happen? And it's natural. So that's really interesting. That's really cool. And so how did, at what point did you want to go to law school?
I was somewhat of a lost kid. I had a brother who at a very young age was very successful in sports. And, typical sibling rivalry issues. I didn't really know what my path was. And I was really fortunate, my dad used to always say to me, listen, like, your brother's amazing and he has this talent that, very few people get to experience, but, his time is kind of now and your time will come. So you will find what it is that you are passionate about, and it doesn't have to be at 16 and 17 and 18. So my dad was really, really the beacon to allow me to be that lost kid and not really know what I wanted to do with my life. I rebelled a little bit in high school. So I actually I ended up going to community college. My parents knew, Wellington was a really small town and they were wise enough to know that I was selling myself short of what my potential was. But if I could just kind of get out of this really small town where my mom was really famous and infamous on some days, that if I could just get out of the town and get out of my brother's shadow and kind of get out of her shadow, that I could really grow. So they were smart enough to say, listen, you're going to go to community college, but we're going to send you a way to do that. So I went to Tallahassee Community College, and I remember my mom dropped me off and she goes, just 7 more years. And I was like, I'm not going to law school. I'm not going. And so it really was not something that I saw for myself, but I think my parents knew what my skill set was. And I think they knew where I was going to find my success. And I went to Tallahassee and I got involved in the legislative process. And through that opportunity, my passion and my understanding of where they were coming from, of why law school was going to be the next sort of natural step for me, is really what propelled me to law school.
Well, that's really interesting because, when I was a good basketball player, not good enough to obviously be a professional, worked my butt off. I could have gone somewhere really, really, really small and just chased the dream for a few more years. But I decided to go to UF and be a normal kid. And I think, and my coaches always said, look, the ball's going to stop bouncing at some point for you, right? For anybody, everybody. And for whether it's a baseball, a soccer ball, a basketball, right? You're going to stop playing. And for a lot of people, it's when they're 14 or even when they're 8 years old and they're a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a little bit faster. And from that time period of 8 until 22, they are the stars. And for some people, they have a hard time dealing with, oh my God, I'm 24 and my career is over. And literally my entire life has been for this. But they get everything, but they work hard for it. And they have that at such a young age. So I have a great appreciation for that. But at the same time, it's hard for people to kind of have that second act, especially, for athletes and whether it could be exceptional dancers, exceptional musicians, right? And so I'm sure that was, I wonder how your brother navigated that. But then from your perspective, that's really interesting because to be the other sibling who's not in the spotlight and still competitive and wanting to do great things. So that's really interesting. So what advice would you have for people who maybe are in that situation, maybe either from what you've learned about your brother's perspective or yours?
Yeah, again, I think a lot of it depended on who I was surrounded by, when you're at that age, confidence is hard, right? You can't necessarily see what your future path can look like, but I had parents who believed in me, who knew that I was at a phase and at a stage in my life and just constantly were drilling in me, you're going to be okay. Like, we're not really worried about you. You're going to grow up. And they let me kind of be an adolescent kid that made mistakes, that didn't get perfect grades. Now I'm getting a master's degree. I was telling you as we sat here, and I don't have 2 A pluses and I'm kind of mad at myself for it, but I think my parents just having had more experience in life, knew that this time shall pass. So it matters who you surround yourself with, but I also did have that belief in myself. I think I knew somewhere deep down I was going to be okay and I was going to figure it out. I just needed to grow up. But also, it's okay to not know what you want to do at 18.
Absolutely.
I still don't really know what I want to do. Like, I love this season of life that I'm in, but I know this chapter one day, like you mentioned with sports, will close. And being okay with the unknown and being okay with knowing that life is going to take so many twists and turns, and that's what makes it awesome. And the path and never knowing what that path looks like, but staying true to yourself and authentic are all that matters. And if you listen to everybody else, you're always going to be steered off course. But if you stay true to you and what you're passionate about, the path's always going to find you.
I think that's amazing advice. And I really want anybody listening to this to, maybe rewind and listen to it again. Because Hillary, I think you're 100% spot on. First of all, your parents did an excellent job of probably being loving and supporting, but not hovering and being the helicopter parents. We see it all far too often here in South Florida where parents just let their kids be kids. I made a lot of mistakes in high school and college and law school. And but I like to say part of, the really cool things that we have going on here at Rossen Law Firm is that we're still making mistakes. We're not afraid to make mistakes. And so many successful people, especially who are book smart, are afraid to make mistakes. They're afraid of failure. And, you know, you don't have to have it figured out. When you're 14, 15, 16 years old, come on, be a kid.
Yeah.
Be a kid now. You want to work hard, right? But be a kid and figure it out. And, as I've gotten older, it's funny, obviously highly educated. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and my wife and I, who's, she's a lawyer, she's a prosecutor, highly educated. We talk about them, and I say, look, 2024, like, we don't even need college. Like, our boys don't need college unless they want to be professionals. It's kind of a scam.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that is so important, those 4 years or longer, and even between that or law school or medical school or just master's or just 4 years or whatever, from that 18 to 22 age, you're learning about yourself, right? Not only did you get out of the village, is it still a village?
It's a village, yeah.
Still a village, okay. But, you were, 6-7 hours by car. You're far away enough where you got to figure out your laundry. You got to figure out this. You don't have mom or dad waking you up saying you got to go to school this morning, right? I had the same kind of stuff. And just figuring out how to be on your own, especially when people, you grew up in Wellington, right? You had it pretty good. And so same with me. I grew up in Boca. I had it pretty good. Whereas we become adults, I feel like, a little bit later, at a later age than people who don't have it so easy. And we need that time to really figure out who we are as human beings and figure out life. And I'm still figuring out life. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? It's constant evolution.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I love what you were saying too about, hey, who knows where you'll be in 5 years? Maybe you'll be governor, right? Maybe you'll be done with politics. You don't know, right? You don't know, but things happen. And I think that's really exciting. So yeah, 100%. Anybody listening to this, rewind a little bit and,
Well, and I think
that
that also, is something that you have to take in with your leadership style, right? Like we have my amazing legislative aide here with us today, Stella, and, Stella makes mistakes. And oftentimes, and I think she's sometimes shocked by my response, which is, okay, you made a mistake, not the end of the world. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out where my lack of direction or my lack of explanation or my willingness to go figure it out. And let's talk about the mistakes that I expect you to make, because it's helping her grow. It's helping her start to understand things that she needs to see and things she needs to look for and anticipate without that hand-holding direction. And I've really I've really taken that type of mindset, not only into my leadership as a boss, but in my parenting,
Oh yeah, that's the ultimate leadership.
Yeah,
right. I mean,
he leads me a lot more
yeah.
than sometimes I care to admit. My Mr. Know-it-all 9-year-old, but he teaches me something every single day.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and so that's something you brought up about leadership that I think is really important. What my business coaches tell me is that as long as you have the right people, the right culture and core value fits, every problem or mistake is a leadership problem, right? Because if you have the right people and they don't, they make a mistake, well then exactly, where did you go wrong? How can you be better to help them? Now, if you don't have the right people who aren't the right culture and core value fits, well then that's a whole separate problem. But as long as you have the right people, everything ultimately goes back to leadership. And there's not a lot of courses on this in college or law school. So we've been, learning as we go, as I'm sure you have, right? Mm-hmm. It's part of the evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, and I'm sure we'll get to it, at 4 years into my legal career, I received a diagnosis of being bipolar 2. And through that journey was a journey of a lot of self-reflection and self-awareness. It's a constant check-in with myself of how am I today? What do I need to do? What are my needs today? And I think through that journey, I really became a much more aware individual of my strengths, my weaknesses, my faults. And I think that has really propelled me into where I'm at today. My leadership skills and where I find myself in politics, because I'm able to take a step back and go, is it my leadership? Where did I go wrong? And a lot of people aren't willing to do that type of work on themselves. And I think if we focus a lot more on that in our education system, that time frame you mentioned of, listen, you've really got to learn yourself, because when you're true to yourself, everything else falls in line. I think that for me was huge in helping propel me to where I'm at today.
Yeah. Our society perpetuates the go, 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 fast success, push hard, get your straight A's. And the straight A's these days aren't good enough. Now you need to be president of 5 different clubs, right? Or be on the sports team and do X, Y, and Z. And you're right. Sometimes it's slow down and learn a little bit about yourself. Self-reflection is huge. I've done so much self-reflection over the last maybe 10 years, right? I'm still not done.
It's every day. You're never going to be done. If you're a believer of it, every day is a learning opportunity.
Right. Oh yeah. So let's kind of, I want to, turn a little bit to how you became a prosecutor, and then we can definitely go throughout that journey. And then I really want to talk more, about everything that fuels you and the diagnosis and just all the really amazing things.
Sure.
So 2006. I'll set the scene. It's 2006. Right. The July bar, we pass. Prosecutor's office, the Broward County State Attorney's Office hires about 30 of us or so. And I know, we all became, maybe 20 of us out of the 30 of us, 15 or 20 became fast friends literally on day one. We had an amazing time. How did you end up getting to take the job there and deciding that you wanted to be a prosecutor?
So, I was the kid in high school that's, wanted to stay home on a Friday night to watch Dateline, in 2020, and any investigative show that I could. And I also really wanted to be a trial lawyer. One of the, things I learned about myself through my journey at Tallahassee Community College and then on to Florida State, was I love public speaking. I know you're shocked by that. Put me in front of a jury of strangers and get them to pick me and vote for me. Like, sign me up for that all day. But I also really believed in, again, going back to my childhood, the community and service to the community. And I did very well in law school. I was on law review. I was president of the Moot Court Honor Society. I was in all the clubs and did all the things, and could have taken any white, white
shoe?
Firm, I gotten any one of those jobs that I really wanted. But for me, I didn't want to sit behind a desk. I really wanted to be a lawyer. I knew that the only way to be a lawyer and to get hands-on experience and to sink or swim was to be an assistant state attorney. And I was working on the Florida Innocence Project at Nova Law School and wasn't really sure if it was state attorney or public defender, right? It was kind of going back and forth because I believe our justice system has problems, and I believe, there are, considerations that we should be looking at as a society. So I was always like, which one? And I was working for the Florida Innocence Project, and my professor looked at me one day and she goes, "You are a prosecutor." Like every letter that came in, I was pulling it apart, and where was the misinformation, or where could I point out that, I didn't think this person warranted our services. And she just looked at me and she was like, you're a prosecutor. I was like, all right, we figured it out. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And, obviously we had great times there, but I was a little similar, a little different. So I did not have the grades. I was at Miami, and Miami was very old school. And I hated law school because I wanted to get in the courtroom, and they really wouldn't let us until our 3rd year. So I'm sitting through all these classes that are boring. I'm a decent writer, but for a lawyer, I'm not really a good writer. And so I didn't do well, and I didn't enjoy it. And that's actually what led me to start coaching high school basketball while I was in law school. So for my 2nd and 3rd year of law school, I went to law school full-time. I clerked at a firm part-time, and really what was also full-time, I coached high school basketball. And that was, that's an amazing experience. And one of my very first team captain, Manny, is now the managing partner of the firm. I mean, we go back 20 years this fall.
It's incredible.
So, yeah, 20 years ago.
That's incredible.
Right. I was at 2L, and I was coaching, and he was a sophomore. So really cool stuff. And coaching basketball has been great to me. And I'm glad I took that leap to go ahead and do that. But I wanted to be in the courtroom. I wanted to fight. I wanted to push myself. And I was more of the shy kid growing up, but I always knew I had it in me. I just needed to kind of get, when I'm around my comfort zone and my friends, it's like nothing, it's like nothing, but being the extreme extrovert, that was not me. And so I've definitely evolved a little bit over the years and grown quite a bit where, trial works, no problem. Speaking on stage at a conference, at a legal marketing or legal management or business conference of 300-400 people, I've done, 20 times, no problem at all. But it's just funny how you evolve in that way. And for me, I wanted to get to homicide in 10 years, which at that time was unheard of.
Yep.
Right. That was my goal. I wanted to be board certified. I wanted to get to homicide. Neither one happened for, just realized that I was better able to serve the community on the defense side. But I kind of, leaned into it and figured things out.
I had an evolution while I was there as well. I thought I would be a lifer. I really wanted to do crimes against children. I knew that took a certain personality and a certain skill set, and that was my goal as well. But I think sometimes it's like, right, you meet your hero and you get a little bit let down.
Right.
And for me, the state attorney's office was a pretty eye-opening experience, having been pretty sheltered. It was an eye-opening experience that resulted in me saying, you know what, it's been great, but it's time for me to move on.
Right. And I learned a lot about leadership, about what
lack of.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, there was nuggets in there.
There were
at times from certain people, but a lot of it is what, not to do. And it's so much more, you have to lead outward and inward. And it's a lot like dating. I think everything goes back to dating in a way, but you have to continue to date. Well, not romantically, but continue to date your employees, right? Your team. You have to be keeping them enrolled. You have to make sure that they're happy, that they're following through with the mission, that they have the buy-in. One of my coaches calls it enrollment, that they're constantly enrolled in the mission and the vision, and they see themselves a part of it, and they know that you care. Mm-hmm. Something as simple as just little conversations to let your team know that, hey, I might be the guy or girl in charge, but I actually care about you as a human being and as a person. And that's so important. And there was, some of those things, but you learn, and then you say, I never want to be like that. And then sometimes you might see yourself being like that in a stressful moment, a busy moment. And then you just have to say, wait a minute, let me take a step back and remember some of the things that I didn't like when I was an employee.
Right. Absolutely.
So but then that goes back to the self-reflection, the self-awareness. And I do think, because I know you and I are very competitive, right? We were two of the better trial lawyers who actually won trials and fought really hard. And I feel sorry for a lot of the people who had me as a 25-year-old prosecutor, because it was more competition based, and I know where I went wrong. But I think young prosecutors should spend a month at the PD's office, because a lot of people come to that role sheltered, wanting to help the community, but not realizing that the community also involves defendants and their families.
Absolutely.
And that's something that, I've always had a passion for helping people. And when I didn't like the way certain things were going on, I truly believe that on the defense side, you can help people in a lot of ways in the community more than you can as a prosecutor.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I had some life experiences occur that don't necessarily need to be on this podcast, but I had some life experiences occur that I had never experienced when I was before being a state attorney, that involved, very close family members' interaction with the criminal justice system. And it was, for me, the first time I had to experience that personally, but it gave me that perspective of, wait a second, not everybody that walks through these doors is guilty. Not everybody that walks through these doors requires the most severe punishment that I can provide. I always believed that my duty was not only to the prosecution, but also to the defense. My job was there to represent Broward County. And sometimes that meant giving immunity to a defendant's brother because I didn't believe my police officer. And I did that because I believed I was there to seek and find the truth. And what was sad for me is exactly what you're saying, is so many people go there without real life experience, and their impression of the individuals that walk through those doors isn't really reflective of reality. And that for me made me a very different prosecutor. It also gave me a lot of pushback from the powers that be, but it made me a really hard fighter because I always fought for what I felt was right, and sometimes that was what was right on behalf of the defendant. And I always felt good when I went to bed at night because I knew what my job was to do, and it wasn't always just to put somebody in jail.
Right. And to be fair to the prosecutors, it's a really hard position when most prosecutors are competitive. Trial lawyers are a different breed. I always say here, right, at Rossen Law Firm, I mean, we have diva lawyers. Our lawyers are divas, and that's a good thing. Sure, can sometimes they be a little frustrating? Yeah, but they're amazing trial lawyers. They're total badasses. They fight the good fight every day. And so what, right? So what? I'd rather be around divas and, hard charging successful people than having to constantly motivate, my team.
Absolutely.
And we all have our personality, differences and here and there, but I would, that's the environment I want. But you have these prosecutors who are young, inexperienced in life, wielding a lot of power, who are competitive, and it's hard to be the white knight. It's hard to truly seek justice if you're not trained and being told that not everything is a competition.
Right.
Right. It's really more about justice than winning. And that was something it took me some time to learn. And when I started to learn that, I didn't really like the office, and but I really wasn't until I started and became a criminal defense attorney, and then got to see, well, in Miami, they do it this way. And in Palm Beach, they do it this way. And then, Naples and Port St. Louis, you do it that way. Right. But gain some perspective outside of the little bubble that for me was Broward County, the Broward County State Attorney's Office and the Broward County Courthouse, just to be able to see that there's differences out there. And again, it also showed leadership, because good leaders can mold these 25-year-old prosecutors and constantly train them and reinforce that it's justice-based, not win at all cost. So I think that's something, that really can be improved upon. And it's gotten a little better, but it can still be improved upon.
Everything can always be improved upon.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so how long were you at the state attorney's office?
So a little less than 3 years.
Okay. So I was out after 18 months. So you almost double.
Yeah, about 2 years, 10 months.
Right. And so kind of walk us through that journey. So you're out. Where do you go?
I took that big white, what did you say?
The white shoe firm,
I took that big white shoe firm and was job and was miserable.
Okay, yeah. And so I get calls from former, PDs and some prosecutors almost every week saying, Adam, I saw you had a job ad. I left for an extra 20, 30, 40 grand. To do insurance defense, plaintiff's PI, corporate, and I am miserable. And I will give it all away in a second to come work for a criminal defense firm, not just a solo shop. Mm-hmm. Right. So so you're there. And
I did the big law firm thing. So when I was in Tallahassee and I served as a legislative aide, I was there during all the medical malpractice reforms. So all the reforms that were passed that really changed the medical malpractice legal industry. And listen, the law has always come relatively easily for me. And I knew I was never going to be a doctor, but I loved the interplay of medicine and law, because medicine was a challenge for me, right? Learning parts of the body and learning, the different things that come with surgery and the mistakes that happen as a result of it. So I fell in love with the interplay of medicine and the law, and was seeking and found a job doing medical malpractice defense, and quickly learned that firm culture and leadership were more important than the type of law that I was practicing.
Okay, right. And that's, again, it's going.
It's the nicest way I can say it.
Well, it's going back to core values. Yeah. And look, we work hard as lawyers, and you got to be happy, right? Doing what you're doing. It's very important. Another reason here, we have me. We just hired our first former prosecutor, but he was a prosecutor and a PD, so I felt good about it. I'm the only one in the firm who's never been a PD. And part of that, I think, is when you have people that really find their passion and have a good cultural environment and like the leaders, it's really important. So, you go there, you go to civil, you go to kind of, right, that world. But civil's a lot of things, and people can find their happiness in certain parts of civil law and others be miserable. So then you kind of move on and talk to us kind of just how did you found the firm? I know it was you and your husband. Just walk us through that, because that takes a big leap.
It does.
Well, not everybody's as young and dumb as I am to start at 26, right? Me and, Bill, my old partner, we started at 26. Although we're lucky, we were too dumb to fail, because at 26, when you're not married and you have no kids and you're used to not making a lot of money, you really have nothing to lose. So we didn't really look at it like that, but we stumbled into it.
Right.
It was great.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I did the civil defense firm for a while, kind of finding different places. Eventually found my stride at a firm in the Gables, commuting from pretty much Boca to Coral Gables every single day.
The bright line.
Before the bright line, and honestly, the bright line wouldn't have helped me.
Right.
But found a firm where, they saw my value, having been a former state attorney. When you make the transition from criminal to civil, a lot of times the civil lawyers will basically say, well, your trials don't count. And I'm like, well, that's really interesting, because I'm pretty sure I picked juries not knowing what witnesses I had, having never spoken to them, right. I got no depositions. Like I tried cases on the fly, and I'm pretty sure, like, have you ever tried to get a breathalyzer into evidence? Or and the evidence that comes with that. But there's a lot of stigma when you leave the state attorney's office and enter into the civil world. But I found myself at a firm that really valued the trial experience that I had, and knew that it was just a matter of learning the rules of civil
right.
procedure, and grew and rose very quickly there. And that's where I fell into the area of law that I currently practice, which is property insurance law. At that time, I was representing the insurance companies, but I was handling, multi-million-dollar federal court cases, which anyone listening, if you practice law, you understand the difference between federal court and state court, with deadlines that are non-negotiable, time frames that are very hard to keep up with, representing some of the largest corporations in the world, handling, traveling 28 days out of the month. But I did that for about 3 years, before the exhaustion to some extent kind of took over. But it was an incredible experience. And I learned, I am the lawyer that I am because of that law firm.
Right. That's amazing.
The Success in South Florida podcast is brought to you by the team at Rossen Law Firm. If you need DUI or criminal defense representation, call the Rossen Law Firm at 754-206-6200 or check the description of today's episode for more contact information. The Rossen Law Firm, helping good people when bad things happen so they can achieve their best futures.
So you're there a few years, and how do you make the big leap to start your own?
So I left that firm, was going through some personal things in my life. This is also really kind of around my mental health diagnosis, and kind of really taking a step, realizing that my happiness was important. And I really wanted to stay a lawyer. I had $160,000 in law school debt, and I couldn't imagine not doing this job anymore, but I also knew that the job was going to kill me if something didn't change. So I took a step back. I took a job at a less prestigious, less reputable, smaller firm, where I really got an opportunity to be a leader, and to be a manager, and to train lawyers. And we talked a lot about, your new role as a teacher, and that's something that, in the future I could see myself doing. I love teaching. I love training. I love making people better at this job, because the reality is there's a lot of bad lawyers out there.
Oh, yes.
And I think bad leadership, bad management, continue to create bad lawyers. And
there should be classes in law school about that. And not just classes, but workshops, practical workshops. And there's none of that. They should bring in those parts from an executive MBA program into law school. And for whatever reason, they don't put any value in that, and they should.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you. So I was still on the defense side. And I had a really big case, with a firm, and I crushed them, of course. And after that case was over, they said, would you ever consider switching sides? And coming and joining the plaintiff's side. And
that's always the ultimate compliment, right?
100%.
And the other side's like, oh, please come.
Yeah. You feel appreciated. Your skill set feels valued. You all the things we want. You want to be seen for your abilities. You want to know that you're a formidable opponent. And it was, I had kind of similar to my feelings about being, a prosecutor, being on the defense and working for insurance companies. I saw, while I didn't have that perspective, I used to get in trouble because I settled my cases too quickly. And it was like, well, that's my job. My job is to advise my clients appropriately. And it was like, well, if you delay this a little bit longer, maybe they take less money because they're tired. And there was a lot of that in the insurance world. Not with the firm where I spent my time. They had a very different mentality. But the firms that I was at for short periods of my career, as I was really finding myself, because again, being true to who you are is important. And for me...
Oh, yes. Authentic.
Yeah.
You said it earlier, authentic.
Yeah. And for me, I wanted to do the job and do it well. And that didn't mean taking advantage of people. And that didn't mean, the person on the other side was just a number of a file. If I believe the insurance company made a mistake, I wanted to be able to rectify it. And not everybody has that firm culture. And I ended up being with a firm that did, which is where I really, hit my stride on the defense side of things. But yeah, so I got the call of come join us, and I took the leap of faith and joined them and spent a couple years with them. I wish I could say that I opened my firm with faith. And I opened my firm because this was my next move. But I unfortunately opened my law firm under circumstances that, let's see how you phrase this politically correctly, that, resulted in a very long lawsuit. And a very detailed lawsuit. It was after having a child. It was after being promised, path of partnership prior to having my child. 2 weeks after my child was born, the partnership being taken away from me because we weren't sure the kind of lawyer I was going to be anymore. Would I make it back full time? Unfortunately, all those things that a lot of women in the professional world experience after motherhood, sadly, as much as we've changed as a society, we haven't in many ways. And my time there was very different after I had my son. And it was a constant, well, have you proven yourself yet? And take your 12 weeks for maternity leave, but nope, you need to come back early now because we have a trial and you're the trial lawyer and we can't try cases. So you've got to come back early and prove yourself to us that, so I reached a place where that environment was clearly toxic. There was an opportunity that fell through, and I woke up one morning to a text message that you don't have a job. And I looked at Michael, my husband, and said, now what? And he goes, let's roll.
Yeah, okay.
Hurricane Irma had just happened. I had developed a really great reputation in my industry, which was important to me, right? When I received the diagnosis of bipolar, I really hid, right? I didn't go to bar events. I really hid from the legal profession because I was afraid of the ramifications if that diagnosis got out. So I really put
there's still a stigma, although it is getting better, there's still a stigma, which is completely wrong.
Which is completely wrong. And I spent a lot of time, talking about it and being open and vulnerable about it because, there's not a lot of people like me who share. And I want to be that success story for people out there that might be struggling because I didn't have that. When I got my diagnosis over 15 years ago, I didn't have anybody that I could look up to say, okay, I can beat this and I can still be successful. It was really presented to me in a manner of like, you're probably going to end up on the street, addicted to drugs or alcohol. Like there was no path for success. It was kind of like a death sentence on some level. But if you can tell anything about me and me, I'm going to come out of this. You put me in a corner. I'm going to figure out a way to do it, and it's not going to be easy, and it may not be easy, but I haven't gotten this far in life by backing down. So long story
short. Well, Hillary, let me stop you there. So I didn't realize that you were diagnosed 15 years ago. So you pretty much kept it to yourself, maybe your absolute closest friends, in the legal profession. I'm assuming your family knew for quite some time, a good, right, 7, 8 years. So what was that process and was this simultaneous to starting the firm or different? Of just saying, you know what, I'm now going to tell my story.
It actually was simultaneous with starting my firm. So obviously when you're involved with a group of people and you are on a path, or you believe you are on a path to partnership, it was really important for me that they knew that was something that I dealt with. I had just had a child. I had concerns about what that could look like, after having a child. And I wanted
Postpartum's no joke.
Postpartum's no joke.
I had postpartum.
It's your whole world's different.
Both my wife and I did. I mean, she had a terrible pregnancy, terrible birth. And for I don't know how, at least for me, 3-4 months, it was just like we just walked around like we didn't, we were shells of the person the people that we were before. So, and even from the male perspective, it's real. It's clearly, without all of the crazy hormones and body changes, I couldn't even imagine just that whole process for women.
It's challenging, and then you add to it the pressures of the profession that we find ourselves in, and the personality types that we are. I'm extremely type A. I was ready to get back, prove myself. All those things that were being asked of me or being told I wasn't going to be able to do. I was like, watch me.
Tell me I can't do something.
I'll show you, but it almost, to some extent was a detriment because it propelled me out faster than maybe I was ready to. But, at that time, it's everything that you've worked your entire life for, and you can't imagine it being gone. I have a very different perspective on life now. Right. I've kind of gotten to that place where, like, knock me down, I will get back up. And my path may look very different than what my plan was, but I don't really plan life anymore. And that's been a very freeing thing for me. As long as you've got that faith and belief in yourself that you can pick yourself up, knock me down, try.
Because so many people, I really want to talk about this. So many people talk about the plan, whether it's a business plan or this, what's your 1, 3, 5 years, right? What are you going to do when you grow up, or what's the next step? There always has to be a next step, I feel like. And now you're saying it's been extremely freeing, liberating to, in some ways, I'm sure you have some ideas, but to not have that formal, stressful, I must do X by Y. So walk us through that.
Yeah, I think if you look through life through those lenses, the opportunities that you miss out on because they're not in your vision or they're not in that narrow focus, like you don't even see them coming and you don't even listen to them, or you're not even open to them. And I know that there's something bigger than me that has a plan for this life. And if I stay so focused on a certain goal or a certain path, what opportunities do I miss out on, or what experiences do I miss out on? For me, I told myself forever a couple things. I would never go into politics, and because of my mom. And then I received the diagnosis of being bipolar, and I was like, politics is never happening because I have this secret, and who's going to elect me, and how am I going to explain this, and all of those things that come with it. But the moment I said, enough of that, this opportunity has presented itself, and who better?
Right.
Let's go, But I think if you've got this plan, or you're stuck on what your life is supposed to look like, man, that's where you miss out on all the fun. The fun in my life has been, well, that's a turn. I didn't see that one coming, and wow, right. What's now in front of me.
Being available to say yes to opportunities.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, that's actually something that I learned from my grandfather. He used to always talk about, opportunity doesn't knock once, it knocks every single day. You just have to be aware and willing to say yes for the right thing. Some people say, and I think that you could be the opposite of too opportunistic, but there's a lot of people that just have those blinders on or live in fear. And you're right, there's fun in well, for some people love stability and love predictability. Other people do like a little bit of the, hey, what's today's adventure, or what's the next year or two going to take me, and maybe, try and then the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah, I have learned to accept about myself that I'm a little bit of a destroyer, in the sense of I'm kind of willing to burn down the path to let new trees grow. And it's scary. I don't say this lightly. I don't say this as though I'm not riddled with anxiety some days over some decisions that I make, or that I don't have that questioning, but I know myself. And I know that when something is right inside, I got to go with it, But I think a lot of people just have never learned how to truly take that time to learn to trust themselves, to learn to sit and go, what is right for me? We spend so much time worrying about what's the narrative going to be? What's going to be said? The fear that's paralyzing, and it paralyzes a lot of people. And, again, whether it goes back to my childhood and the strength my parents instilled in me of just being like, you're a badass and like, you're going to go get it. And if you fail, you fail, but you'll pick yourself up and you'll be that much stronger for it. I think that's the beauty of this life. And I think a lot of people go through life missing out on so much opportunity because they're afraid. It's scary. I do a lot of big things, and it's scary, but there's a lot of excitement in that fear.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think too often fear holds people back. It's a limiting belief. The growth is in the discomfort. It's also a little exciting. Some people, that can be too intoxicating and their whole life is just chaos. So we don't want that either. But far too many people are afraid of failure. Failure is a good thing. And what I've learned over the years is that it's never true failure. It's just something didn't work out and you learned from it. It's a learning opportunity. What's the worst that can happen that all of us replay in our minds 100 times while we're in the shower, driving, laying in bed, at night? That never happens.
But I also think when you live in that space, you're living in a space of the possibilities that you are placing on yourself, and the limitations you place on yourself. Like, who's to say what's a failure?
Right.
At the end of the day, like, maybe it didn't work out the way you had it planned, but that's because you had it planned too far out. Like, that's the limitation. And I really try to live in a space of empowerment and recognizing that there's really nothing limiting about life. You're never going to know, was this the right path or not? It's just going to be the path. And does it feel right for you is the only question you have to ask yourself.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. But, so kind of going back to what we were talking about, I was placed in a position where, in light of the lawsuit, in light of that fight with my prior firm, the defense was going to be that I was crazy. The defense was going to be, well, this is what we're going to reveal about you. And again, you put me in a corner. I will now become the poster child for mental health in the legal community, because you won't take that narrative from me, because I'm not crazy. I'm not unstable. You don't make it to where I've made it in life without, having conquered this. And I genuinely believe that I have conquered this. It's something I think about every day. It's something that but I don't let it does not run my life. It is not something that I wake up in the morning and go, it's not that for me. But it's more of an empowering thing. I think it's my rose and it's my thorn. I think it's why I'm a successful lawyer. I think outside of the box. I also think it's why my clients and my constituents love me. At the end of the day, I have a lot of empathy and compassion for people. I have been in some really low, dark places in my life. So when a client calls me frustrated because an insurance company, after a massive hurricane, is refusing to pay them what they are owed, and all of their memories are gone, and they're living in a trailer, and they are at their lowest of lows, I can be a friend and I can be a counselor, and I can guide them from a place of empathy and compassion and understanding, versus I've never experienced anything hard in my life.
You're not crunching numbers in your head about the cost of the roof and the flooring and whether the flooring is continuous or not. You're worried about the memories and what the home represents to this person.
And how can I get them back to that quality of life faster? to give them, their children, their wherever they're at in their stage in their life, how can I bring them back some peace? Because your home is your peace.
And most lawyers have that analytical brain where it's just all facts, numbers, right? Just data. And yeah, I mean, that's what makes you special. I think that's what makes us special, is we're just good people who care and love about people. And that's also one of the reasons why I really like hiring public defenders, because for us, criminal law is one thing. It's not necessarily a love of criminal law. It's a love of helping others through criminal defense.
Yeah.
And there's a major difference to that. And, we've definitely evolved over the years into that. So yeah, I feel you completely on that. So, okay, you're going through this, right? Obviously the firm does really well. I know you guys are doing some really cool things in there. The lawsuit, that's beyond, that's all behind.
That was such a blip in the radar. At the end of the day, I'm so thankful. Again, I'm so thankful for it, because I didn't even realize the cage, to some extent, I had placed myself in by holding on to the secret, to then propel myself into being the poster child for the legal community for a successful, mental health journey, to launch a nonprofit. I launched a nonprofit called Namaste the Stigma Way, highlighting the Florida Lawyers Assistance Program, which is the only organization that provides mental health and substance abuse services to the legal community, which we are 3.6 times more likely than any other profession to suffer from it, because of the nature of the personalities that got us there and the nature of the profession. And to be able to be a leader in that space, in our profession, to help make our profession better, to help people know that they're not alone in it, to be a beacon for people. I mean, I still get stopped by lawyers that talk about the video that I did for the Young Lawyers Division of the Florida Bar. I launched a campaign for them called Stigma Free. And to just... the reception that I received the moment I shared my story was worth any, the fear kept me back, right? But the moment I released it and put it out into the universe, one, it freed me, it liberated me, it allowed me to go, you don't have anything over me. I'm gonna tell my story, and I'm gonna do it in a manner that's empowering, because my story is empowering. My journey is very empowering, and I want people to know that you can tackle it, you can do it. There's a light at the end of the tunnel if you're willing to do the work.
Right, and I'm sure there's dozens, probably there's hundreds of lawyers that you've impacted that you'll never even know you impacted. So, and it's amazing that years later, still people come up to you, and that's just a fraction. So, you've definitely made the right move, and it was empowering, but there was that fear too, and you conquered it. So it's something that the legal profession needs, and probably needs again and again and again.
Yeah, it's got to be a constant conversation, and I think they are so much better at it now. But for me, I've been able to take that platform, obviously, to a larger audience. I am the only elected official in the country that is open and vocal about having what is considered to be a severe mental health diagnosis, right? Like, most people deal with depression and anxiety, and that seems to be more of a common thing to talk about. But bipolar, to some extent, is still this unknown that people don't have a big understanding about. And I'm the first, elected official in the country to talk about that. So that platform's even larger now, that I can share, to be able to say, look at everything you can accomplish. This doesn't have to be that nail in the coffin as I thought it was going to be for me a long time ago.
People need more inspirational leaders to look up to, rather than just the same type of people doing the same type of things, So that's really important. So, and how did you end up going from all these little, journeys and divisions and decisions to saying, well, I'm going to run to be a state representative? Because you may have had that dream. Well, initially you said no. And then the hamster on the wheel is turning, and you're thinking about it and kind of maybe daydreaming about it. But then to just go, I'm actually going to do this.
I am not somebody that sits back and kind of lets other people do things for me, right? And having the experience that I had in Tallahassee during all the reforms to medical malpractice, when Michael and I started our law firm, all of a sudden it became very real, right? You start a business, people rely on you. You now have a level of responsibility that I had never experienced before. And quite frankly, growing up in a home with a father who was self-employed, I was of the opinion that my path was never going to involve self-employment. Similar to no politics.
Because you got to see all of the bad, all of the hard behind it. And I always say, especially from a high school basketball coaching background, there's a big difference between being an assistant coach and a head coach. It's much easier to be the assistant coach and make recommendations. But when you're the one who's the head coach, who's standing up while you're coaching, you see the game a little differently. And when you have to make the final call about you're down one, we're running this play to win the game, right? Versus, oh, I think you could do this, or what about this, right? It's a totally different mentality. Yeah, I mean, and ultimately the buck stops with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big deal. And I take that responsibility very seriously. When we started our firm, we both, after a couple months, both brought with us legal assistants that had been in our lives at previous iterations. And they worked out of the out of the dining room of our house. Our office was in our, we had a little 3-bedroom, our son's room, and then we had our guest bedroom that we turned into a 2-person office. Both of us could barely get through. And when we brought on our staff, they worked literally out of our living room. And if you ask them, they'd go back to that any day of the week.
The good old days.
Because they got to see, our son was 2. And they got to literally be with him on a daily basis, and they loved that time. And it was a really great time. But we needed to move out of the house. But sorry, I forgot the question.
Well, just I know, right? Well, yeah.
I'm also a person. Yeah.
No, how kind of you're going through to decide to run for office?
So I was never really political, I think, because, politics was really hard, and I hope I'm doing it differently than my mom did, and I don't fault her whatsoever. But for me, growing up, my mom missed out on a lot, and I had a lot of resentment because eventually, as things happen in politics, not everything always ends well. And I saw a woman who dedicated her entire life to public service, kind of get destroyed for no reason. But that's how politics operates. And I looked at it from the lens of, well, you know what? I never got to go to the holiday parade with my mom because my mom was running it. And my mom missed out on this because she was at a city commission meeting till 2:00 in the morning. And my mom wanted to keep our lives separate. So I didn't get engaged in a lot. So I didn't get to see the positive of what she was doing. I really only saw the negative, and I'm really doing things differently with my kid because I want him to, see that we are a family dedicated to public service and to the community, but also I want him to be proud of me. And I regret that I really was never proud of my mom. It was always more of a burden and a sadness of what I was missing out on versus the exposure of it from the perspective of, wow, my mom's amazing, and I have that perspective now because my mom's amazing. But I didn't have it as a kid. And I know there's going to be some resentment and all of that with my child, but I have him come with me when my cities are talking about possibly public school closures because I want him to see what it's like when a kid comes up and takes the microphone and talks about him lose the potential loss he's going to feel if his school closes down. Like, my kid goes to those meetings, but he also gets to hear the mayor talk about me and the good work that I'm doing. And I want him to know that if mommy misses soccer on a Tuesday night, I'm not out with my friends. I'm not out just because I don't want to be there. Mommy's doing this. And I'm hoping that I'm instilling this in him and from a different perspective. But, we started our firm, to get back to your question, we started our firm and the responsibility hit me of, if we really want to keep this going, I had such a base level understanding of our business practice doesn't necessarily change because, we don't do well for a particular client or a referral source that, gives us business, decides they want to take their business elsewhere. The power is in the legislature. Right. And if we really want to have a seat at the table and be engaged in conversations about this area of law and consumer focused reforms and how to make sure we have an affordable, available, stable insurance market, we can't let other people control that narrative. I'm not going to let anybody else control that narrative. It's going to be me. And I started to see things coming out of Tallahassee that I believe to be pretty anti-consumer, anti-Floridian, really pro-insurance. But because I have that balance, I'm also a Libra, so balance to me in life is very important. But I have such balance perspective because I have represented the insurance companies and I understand the fraud and I understand, their perspective on many of these issues. But I see the consumer side of things because I've been on the consumer side now for over 10 years. And I said, we got to get engaged in the legislative process. And I started a committee called Florida Policyholders Cooperative, where I started going to Tallahassee on a weekly basis. My son was 2, during legislative session and before legislative session, engaging with legislators on, the reality is we've been in an insurance crisis since a lot of people will tell you since Andrew, but it actually really predates even Andrew. And we kind of continue to be in the same cycle of a lack of affordable, available, reliable insurance in the state. And we just kind of keep doing this same cycle over and over again. And I said, we got to get to Tallahassee. So I started engaging in the legislative process as a consumer advocate, meeting with legislators on both sides of the aisle, talking to them about, reforms that were pro-insurance and reforms that were really, pro-consumer and what needed to happen to create this marketplace that was going to thrive for Floridians from here to the foreseeable future. And not ever honestly expecting even at that point that I would find a role in the legislature. But, I'll share my dad's been telling me since I was 5, I would be the first female governor of the state of Florida. And I think politics, despite my resistance to it, I'm suited for it. And when you're in that space, a lot of people go, you got to be at the table. And I started to realize, as much as I enjoyed being, at the table, I wanted to be a decision maker. I wanted to be a policy maker. I wanted to be in the room where the decisions were happening, and not just having meetings about them. And the seat came up. I was never involved in politics. I was not the chosen favorite. I didn't get the endorsement. I didn't, but I won.
So I wanted, and in some ways, I wish we were here on a Joe Rogan style podcast because I could go 3 hours talking to you. Easy.
I don't have any other plans today.
I know.
Just bring me back.
Well, we'll bring you back for sure because this is so fascinating to me. And I know our listeners are loving this. But when you're there, and especially local politics, right? If you're not the chosen one in local politics for this seat or that seat or this, how did you break through and win?
I think I was the best candidate, and I think the people figured that out.
But how? Because we're talking how many people voted, right, in that election for that seat? 10,000, 15,000? Is it a little bit more?
We're going back a couple years because I just had it. I didn't actually have an election. I won this term unopposed. So I don't even tell me what my numbers are. But listen, if for this particular seat, it's a primary race, so the race was really won in that primary. And I think, listen, it came with a lot of hard work. Nothing in life comes easy. It came with a lot of hard work, and it came with a lot of, the naysayers were going to be the naysayers because, one, wasn't engaged in politics from a party perspective, but two, I've switched my party affiliation, so it was, well, you're too much of this party and not enough of this party. And so I got all of those attacks. But I think at the end of the day, in comparison to my opponents at the time, I was a 15-year trial lawyer specializing in the area that is the number one issue for Floridians, and that's property insurance. I think people saw through the narrative of what my label was or wasn't, and most people, there's a small group of people that are actually like involved in like the partisan politics. The rest are everyday people. And I think everyday people, listen, I also, anytime they wanted to debate, let's debate. Because, we're
right, I'm
all day long, I understood the issues. I'm a mom. I was a mom to a 5-year-old at the time, a 6-year-old at the time that I ran for office. And something that's really fascinating to me about politics is my age group is the age group where most women are not involved in the political process because we're at home raising our family. So when you see a woman in politics, you usually see her young or not married and no children, or she waits until her children are not in the home. But I, chose to do this at a time because I do want to make this country better for my kid. And I'm willing to make that sacrifice for him now. And I have a perspective as a woman, as a business owner, as an attorney, that I think the voters really resonated with. The other thing is, I think also very similar to where our country's going, I'm very moderate, I see the perspectives of both sides. I've been involved in both sides of the aisle. It's why I'm effective in Tallahassee. I'm able to work across the aisle with my colleagues. Because one, I don't take this business personally, but two, you can learn something from everybody. And everybody's got amazing perspective, and we don't have to agree. I don't want to agree with everybody because then I'm just a copycat, or I don't want that in this world. So, so I think the voters at the end of the day knew I was the best candidate to get the job done, and they were right. Yep. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Hillary, you just dropped so much knowledge on us, not just your story, but all the life lessons, the business lessons, the personal lessons that we've learned from this. I want to give you an opportunity just to have some kind of parting thoughts, words of wisdom for, our listeners. And then what's the best way for anybody to reach out to you?
Ooh, what are my parting thoughts? I think if I could impart any wisdom, is like, just be ready for this ride that is life, and be willing to say yes and be open, but be willing to take a step back and be self-reflective and recognize where you can grow as an individual. I think for me, growth on a daily basis is important, whether it's what podcast am I listening to? What conversation am I having? What nugget can I learn? What's something new that I can learn every day about myself? I do a lot of journaling because I want to take that time to go introspective and figure out where I can continue to grow as a person. Because if you're not growing, you're dead.
Absolutely.
And also recognizing, how can I be a better human? Because I think the better human I am, that reflects out in society and that trickles out, and we've got to be better to people. So, when you're down, get back up, believe in yourself, stay true to yourself, and nothing else matters.
Right. And you do such a great job of balancing the emotion and the logic, which is hard. And it's things that I'm learning as well. So Hillary, thank you so much. What's the best way that anybody can get in touch with you? Because I know I highly encourage people to take that step, slide into Hillary's DMs, email or whatever. But, knowing you for as long as I have, I know, you're a giver. You would love to help, and anything you could do to help others, I know you're all about paying it forward.
100%. So listen, my law firm is Cassel and Cassel. So Google.
Are you the first or second?
Oh, I'm the first.
Okay, I figured.
100%.
Okay.
And it's actually something.
Is that known in the firm?
Oh, not only is it known, if you ever attend anything that we speak at, that is something that Michael is obligated, as he will tell you in our partnership agreement, to say.
He's the second named
He is
partner.
absolutely the second named partner, and he's happy to have that. But listen, so Cassel and Cassel, that's an easy place to reach me. It's CASSEL ×2. Google it. If you want to reach out to me in my legislative capacity, in my role as a state representative, you go to Florida House of Representatives. I'm sorry, I'm not somebody who knows my phone numbers, because I just hit my favorite button. Stella might be able to chime in real quick, but I'm easily findable on Instagram, Rep Hillary Cassel. Facebook is the same. But I'm probably one of the easier guests that people might be able to find. I'm kind of, if you look for me, you can't miss me.
Right. Perfect.
But please reach out. I love connecting with people. I love connecting with Floridians. I don't care where you live. I don't even have to be in Florida. But if you're struggling, obviously mental health is a huge part of what I talk about and how I like to give back, because I know that struggle, and I know it doesn't have to be that hard, as long as you've got the willpower and you've got the willingness to say, I can do this, and look at her. She's crushing it, because I'm crushing it.
Yeah, there you are. That's why I wanted you on here for so long. So awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next one. All right.